All right, so this will be part four of um, How to Believe in Fairies, an essay by Stephen R. L. Clark from the University of Liverpool, or is it Liverpool University? Yeah, University of Liverpool. And I ended part three with a quote from W.B. Yeats, and I'll begin there again. Perhaps Yeats was right that fairies are too simple for us. Fairies, or the city, Sidhe. Not sure how to pronounce that. Yeats writes, "It is one of the great troubles of life that we cannot have any unmixed emotions. There is always something in our enemy that we like, and something in our sweetheart that we dislike. It is this entanglement of moods that makes us old. If we could love and hate as good heart, if we could love and hate with as good heart as the city do, we might grow to be long-lived like them. Mortals have many duties and many moods. The city, like the Olympians, are appallingly single-minded. Some fairy creatures are thus guardians of natural woods and lakes, others of human habitations, until they are offended by the human occupier's gift of clothing, or occasionally the meanness of the clothes they are given. They have some connection with the seeming dead. They may inhabit old grave mounds, the hollow hills, and may entrap young girls or men into their dances. In Brittany, indeed, many of the stories told elsewhere of fairies were told explicitly of the dead. The bodies of the dead are as illusory as the fairy gold, and vanish as quickly, while the real person is compelled, or willing enough, to stay in the fairyland, a place of twilight, neither day nor dark, neither heaven nor hell. The only verdict which seems reasonable is that the fairy faith belongs to a doctrine of souls, says Evan Wentz. Fairies steal babies as well, to improve their stock, leaving ancient channelings that do not grow or prosper, though the fairy mother has been known herself to retrieve the child. Ancient changelings, sorry. Men have even won occasional fairy wives, who leave them when some simple taboo is broken, like their sisters are abused or their husband accidentally strikes them with a horse's bridle. It is well to be on good terms with them, but disaster usually follows any mortal who seeks too close an acquaintance. No mortal should think they can be caught by ropes or by promises. Not that they will break the promise, but that it will be so worded that they are released from any obligation. Even to write about them may damage more than one's reputation. And I do so only because, quote, I have grown to believe that there is no dangerous idea which does not become less dangerous when written out in sincere and careful English. That's W.B. Yeats. Like Yeats also, what I wish is a society where, quote, a man is heard by the right ears, but never overheard by the wrong, and where he speaks his whole mind gaily, and is not the cautious husband of a part, where fantasy can play before matured into conviction. Where fantasy can play before matured into conviction. It's the end of Yeats's quote. These uncanny beings may be felt by anyone prepared to allow them their existence, on which, see below. But only cunning men, and those whom they enlighten, can expect to see them clearly. Let a cunning man touch your shoulder, or press your foot, and you may see the rushing hosts of fairy. Kirk, or of fairy. That's an Evan Wentz quote. We can easily label this hypnosis or hypnagogic dream, and the dream world is indeed an appropriate enough title for fairyland, as long as we remember that such waking dreams and hypnagogic visions are not vague nor empty of effect. As Yeats writes, quote, The elaborate pictures one sees between sleeping and waking often show powers of design and invention that would have taken hours of an artist's time." End quote. The fairy hosts are vivid and exact, not lit by sun or moon. Their voice is generally an indistinct twittering unless their seer is directly addressed. In all this, they are very like what any of us can recognize as dreams. Mermaids are not manatees, any more than the phantoms of your last night's dream theater are likely to be found at the break of day. Conversely, mermaids are not unreal, any more than dreams are unreal. Quote, "No matter what one doubts, one never doubts the fairies, for they stand to reason," says Yeats. Part 2. Yeats himself claimed that, quote, "We can make our minds so like still water that beings gather about us that they may see, it may be, their own images, and so live for a moment with a clearer, perhaps even with a fiercer life because of our quiet." End quote. He, quote, "had learned so to suspend the will that the imagination moved of itself." End quote. Moore gives details of Yeats's and his friends' visionary experiences. He believed, it seems, that the anima mundi, the world soul, was disclosed to him in such semi-trances, having, quote, "a memory independent of embodied individual memories, though they constantly enrich it with their images and their thought." Quote, "Behind the visible are chains on chains of conscious beings, who change according to their whim, or the mind that sees them. You cannot lift your hand without influencing and being influenced by hordes. The visible world is merely their skin." That's cited in Evan Wentz. You cannot lift your hand without influencing and being influenced by hordes. The visible world is merely their skin. On that causal or metaphysical theory, I here express no opinion. What concerns me is the mere phenomenon of fairy vision, splendidly and with proper detachment, shown in Crowley, his publication in 1981. To those who see only cynical make-believe or random fantasy in fairy lore, I have no answer, except that it seems to me unlikely that our ancestors were wholly fools. Fantastic as they are, such tales have proved an inexhaustible fount of inspiration for poets and artists throughout the ages. Only through blind arrogance can all this testimony be dismissed as of little or no significance. Increasing numbers of modern scholars are learning to treat tradition with respect and to realize that wisdom did not begin with us. That was all a block quote from Rees and Rees, 1961. The main body of the text goes on. Messages, quote, "from those beings or bodiless moods, or whatever they be, that inhabit the world of spirits," end quote, from Yeats, "constitute the fabric of our human world, the world as we experience it. Perhaps the materialists are right, and the real causal work is done by elementary particles behind our backs. If that is so, then all our experience is, in a sense, hallucinatory. People and their intentions, colors, living creatures, are not to be mentioned in a wholly exact science, and the concepts of folk psychology or folk physics must join phlogiston and the ether on the rubbish heap of history. If that is so, and folk psychology and folk physics are merely convenient fictions that a wholly adequate intelligence would live without, it is open to us to inquire after other fictions that have served us well. If desires and beliefs are not real causes, and neither are fairies, why should we not investigate fairies as convenient fictions? If, on the other hand, they are real causes, maybe what we call fairies are so too. Quote from Yeats: all sounds, all colors, all forms, either because of their preordained energies or because of long associations, evoke indefinable and yet precise emotions, or as I prefer to think, call down among us certain disembodied powers, whose footsteps over our hearts we call emotions. End quote. Yeats himself described magic as the evocation of visions by means of symbols, a doctrine that could easily be interpreted in a merely practical sense, but which he meant to be understood more shockingly. His three doctrines are as follows. 1. That the borders of our mind are ever shifting, and that many minds can flow into one another, as it were, and create or reveal a single mind, a single energy. That the borders of our memories are as shifting, and that our memories are a part of one great memory, the memory of nature herself. And 3, that this great mind and great memory can be evoked by symbols. Michael Robartes, who first appears as the sinister hero of Yeats's horror story, Rosa Alchemica, declares that, quote, the more a man lives in imagination, and in a refined understanding, the more gods does he meet with and talk with. The many think humanity made these divinities, and that it can unmake them again. But we who have seen them pass, in rattling harness and in soft robes, and heard them speak with articulate voices while we lay in death trance, know that they are always making and unmaking humanity, which is indeed but a trembling of their lips. They have come to us, all that you have met with in your books. There is Lear, and he laughs because you thought yourself in existence, who are but a shadow, and him a shadow, who is an eternal God. End quote. Robartes and his sect teach that we may, through the intense imagination and evocation of passion, create forms to be animated by the bodiless souls who were what men called the moods. Those moods and exaltations are not to be conceived as merely changes in the visionary's heart. They are realities which may be communicated to many visionaries, and which have their own being. Phenomenologically, Yeats and Robartes are correct. Moods, and their corresponding thoughts, may be shared as easily as any common perceptions, perhaps even without any spoken word or gesture to convey the image from one seer to another. Some of Yeats's acquaintance believed more strongly than he did that novel results could be obtained by attending to our hearts. I once visited a Kabbalist who spent the day trying to look out of the eyes of his canary. He announced at nightfall that things had for it color, but no outline. His method of contemplation was probably in error. Oddly enough, the result is at least compatible with more ordinary ethological research. This is not so much telepathy as the opening of the mind's eye inward to a larger mind that encompasses many lesser minds, or else the recognition that our thoughts are not entirely made by us. More homely examples, as of marital telepathy, or the zeitgeist, confirm that this is how life actually is for us. Like Aurobindo, Yeats suspected that we picked them up from the circumambient ether. Like Jung, he suspected that it was not we who made the gods, but they who made us. Yeats had no explanation for the correspondence between his vision and Spengler's Decline of the West, except the elemental things that go